Hey, welcome in. Hope everybody's having a good night. So, we don't normally go on Sundays. I'm trying out some different times here. I couldn't go last Friday. That's the normal night. So, I did Wednesday last week. And I'm trying out Sunday earlier, which is it's 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. I don't know how that's gonna work in terms of drawing new people in. I guess we'll see. I know we've already got hot retarded chicks in the comments. Glad to have you here, HRC. And as always, I have to wonder because it's the name of and this is somebody who's been with me for years and is a very valued follower. But the initials are Hot Retarded Chicks is the name, but it's HRC, which is like Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I don't know. It makes me a little bit nervous because I don't know who I'm talking to exactly. I do feel compelled to say every single time I do not have any information that would lead to the arrest of Hillary Rodham Clinton. So just to get that out there. Let's see. Posty Pope, we've got. Well, what are the chances? I know. Imagine meeting you here. Crazy. All right. So what are we doing tonight, folks? What are we doing tonight? So first off, now, if you're not watching from Canada, you may not know that there's some controversy in Canada right now. I don't understand why it's controversial myself, or I do, but it shouldn't be controversial. The Alberta Premier has unveiled some rules, parental consent rules, and rules around transgender sports in Alberta. And I think this stuff is actually extremely moderate, but of course the media is freaking out because everything is Hitler. Everything is literally Hitler. And I mean, it's just basically a sport for the media in Canada to just attack anything that's remotely reasonable, anything that's not completely insane. So we're going to talk about that. We'll spend a while on that, I think, because I've got quite a bit of stuff racked up for it. We're going to talk about the Machete Professor. Do you remember the Machete Professor? I do. That was the professor in New York who threatened a reporter with a machete. A machete. How do you say it? Machete? Machete? I'm not sure. All I know is that they're dangerous and you probably shouldn't threaten people with them if you're a professor and you want to keep your job. So the Machete Professor got fired and then rehired immediately by another college that I guess didn't hear about the whole machete thing, the whole threatening people with machetes thing. And anyway, spoiler alert, Machete Professor has been fired again. So it turns out it was, there's a pattern of behavior with Machete Professor. So there's that. Let's see. Poet says everything in Canada is controversial if you're on left or if you're on the left or liberal. Yes, everything is literally Hitler. Everything is the end of the world. Anything common sense, certainly. I mean, we'll probably talk about my theories and all this tonight on what really motivates these people to freak out about just common sense things that everybody should agree on. And it has to do with this progressivism and just a feeling of what's left, of what is to the left, and that must be the right thing to do. And they just go on that feeling. That's why it seems like they don't have any principles. It's because they don't. They're just going off what feels, right? What feels a certain way. Elon Musk is talking about Biden intentionally flooding the U.S. with illegals to create a permanent majority, a one-party state. So, I mean, this is all fairly obvious stuff, but, we'll take a look at it. And then we're going to go, through a bunch of stuff that I've curated from my Twitter feed over the last, 4 days or something. And we've got some stuff here. Glenn Greenwald talking about Tucker Carlson going to the Ukraine. So we'll spend some time on that. Because again, this is something I don't think should be particularly controversial, right? A journalist going to do an interview. So, in any case, that's where we're going. But first off, First off, let's get to this stuff in Alberta. So, Alberta unveils changes to parental consent rules, transgender sports. The changes were unveiled by Premier Danielle Smith in a video posted to social media on Wednesday afternoon. And there's a lot of talk about, oh, this is political. And of course, there's been a bunch of moves like this in, I think, about 14 American states. And the Canadian media hates anything conservative, especially in the United States. They're obsessed with it, and then they like to try and transfer their loathing and hatred onto anything Canadian conservative. But in any case, let's keep going. So it says Americans on the left are trembling because Tucker's talking to Putin. I know. They're freaking out. They're freaking out. They've thrown all of their principles out the window, especially journalists of all stripes across, well, not of all stripes, but leftist journalists in the United States and Canada. They've all thrown their principles out the window and they're freaking out. Again, it doesn't feel left to talk to Putin, to do an interview with Putin. That doesn't feel like the acceptable. That's not part of the acceptable narrative, right? So therefore, don't do it. They know what to do and what not to do. They feel the social pressure, the professional pressure. You don't do that. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. I could get criticized on Twitter for doing that. I'm not doing that. Why is Tucker doing that? MSNBC is going to be really, really mad. All right, so the Alberta government unveiled a series of new policies regarding children and LGBTQ rights on Wednesday. And, I really hate the language, the way the language has been so manipulated. They say the modern left doesn't use language to communicate, they use it to manipulate. I think James Lindsay said that. So we're talking about gender reassignment, as they euphemistically call it, gender affirmation or gender affirming care, right? So really the L, the G, the B, the Q with its infinite number of genders, they don't really have anything to do with this. So it's this pseudo group that's been created. And they will talk to somebody who represents one of these letters as if they are an elected representative of all of them. Like all of the gay people, for instance, got together and elected the mayor of Gaytown, right? That Gaytown doesn't exist. There's no elections. Nobody authorized this person. It's just somebody, they say, well, that person's gay and all gay people must think the same. This is the way leftists see the world, right? They think, well, they all must think the same, so we could just talk to anyone. They're all just completely interchangeable. That is, of course, the way that the modern left, the authoritarian left, sees everybody, just as parts of faceless identity blobs, essentially. So this is framed as something that's affecting all of these people who it's not actually affecting. There's one group and there's one subgroup within that group, within the T that's being affected. And those people are children. Children. People who haven't actually grown into their fully adult bodies yet. So, and I think that it's, I don't know, it would seem like common sense maybe to exercise some caution regarding those people, right? Who don't know what they're going to be or how they're going to adjust to their actual adult bodies. It would seem like maybe a good idea to exercise some caution before you mutilate them. I mean, that's just me. Is that crazy? Does that sound crazy to you guys? Don't just run out and start mutilating children. Anytime that the solution, the cure for something is mutilating, maybe you should get a second opinion. Anyway. So the language, yeah. So right off the bat, we have this really deceptive language. It's not real, right? This is a false idea here, including bans on gender reassignment surgery for those aged under 17 and on hormone therapy for children aged 15 and under, as well as limits on sports participation of transgender athletes. Again, hormone therapy. Does that really cover everything that it is? Does hormone therapy cover like all of the extremely negative outcomes that can be experienced with that will be experienced with that? I mean, at no point in whatever they're describing this in the media, they never mention anything about like permanent medicalization. They certainly never mention anything about like detransitioners or places, and we'll get into this where we're ahead of the curve on this stuff and they're walking it back now because they've looked at the data and said, yikes, this is kind of a horror show. We'll get into all of that. I'm feeling like I got some energy tonight. Maybe this not doing live streams at like 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe it's a better idea. Maybe doing them while I'm still awake is a better idea. I don't know. I feel like I've got more energy. And I hope you guys do too, because this is going to be fucking exhausting. The changes were unveiled by Premier Danielle Smith in a video posted to social media on Wednesday afternoon. So we're not going to watch that whole video. We're just going to go over the major points here. So what are the policies? Minors age 17 and 17 and under are not permitted to undergo top and bottom gender surgeries. And I don't really feel like top and bottom surgeries really does describe it, right? I don't think it does justice to what they actually do to children, right? I'm not sure that top and bottom surgery doesn't sound like that big of a deal, does it? I mean, top surgery is double mastectomy. Well, that seems like kind of a big deal. If you change your mind, well, there goes breastfeeding, right? I mean, it seems like, but again, this is the way that we're manipulated. Top and bottom surgeries. No, there's a whole world of horror involved in those words. These are euphemisms. That's what the word, I guess this is what the word euphemism was made for. Anyway, minors aged 17, so under 18 are not permitted to be, they're not permitted to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Mutilated. That's the word. They're not allowed to be mutilated. They're not allowed to be sacrificed to the gender gods. I have to say, I was thinking about this earlier, is that there seems to be some similarities to me to like the child sacrifice from ancient civilization, like in Central America. They would throw children into cenotes, into those deep wells, for like the rain god. There were a number of, a number of uses for child sacrifice in the ancient world, all over the ancient world. Warding off evil spirits and all kinds of stuff. It feels kind of similar to that because all this gender stuff is not, I mean, there's no actual concrete evidence behind any of it. It's this, the gender itself has been redefined into this abstract concept, this metaphysical concept, right? If you've got infinite numbers of genders, if you've got infinite numbers of something, right, and they can include frog gender or omnigender, which is all genders. If you've got something like that, that's a red flag that it's not real. And maybe you shouldn't be basing people's medical and health decisions on something that's pretty clearly made up. It feels like a lot of this is genuinely, it feels like it's to satisfy some sort of gender gods that they worship, that the left now worships. This is what's become God for them. Gender is now the progressive soul. And these are all just articles of faith. None of it makes any fucking sense. Again, I've said this a million times. I'm going to tell you guys again. How can gender be a social construct and also like a 6-year-old be born in the wrong body or anybody be born in the wrong body? None of this makes sense. It's completely incoherent. It's a religion, and these are all articles of faith. Let's see. William says that brainwashing by school boards and teachers. Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, there's a deep level of indoctrination here, and we see it in the language itself. I mean, the language is carefully kind of engineered, like top and bottom surgery or gender affirming care. And what does gender affirming care mean exactly? Well, there it goes under the assumption that if a child says, "I think I'm born in the wrong body," that they therefore are, that it's a self-diagnosis. That is at the center of gender affirming care. It's self-diagnosis by the person. In this case, we're talking children, right? And then you just simply must go along under the assumption that they're correct and that this is all real. And there is no other reasons for their confusion. So I'm saying that I don't feel like there's that much difference between the ancient child sacrifice and this. Let's see. So, children aged 15 and under will not be permitted to either use puberty blockers or undergo hormone therapy for the purpose of gender reassignment or affirmation, save for those who have already begun treatment. So, if you are 15 or under and you've already started this, your parents have already put you on this road. Um, well, you can keep doing it. So, this is extremely moderate policy here. I mean, I think it's kind of crazy to have any 15-year-old under, on puberty blockers or hormone therapy. That it just the whole thing just seems completely insane to me. But this is a very these are very mild, moderate policies as far as I'm concerned. Those aged 16 and 17 will be permitted to commence hormone therapies for gender reassignment and affirmation purposes, Smith said, so long as they are deemed mature enough to make these decisions and also have parental, physician, and psychologist approval. Well, the only one that matters here is parental because in Canada, physicians and psychologists, that's just a rubber stamp. The official policy in Canada is gender affirming, which means you just say yes and when. And here's a prescription. So these last two don't mean anything. Really, it just comes down to parents. The government will now allow. The government will now require parents to be notified and opt in for each instance a teacher intends to give formal instructions on gender identity, sexual orientation, and human sexuality. It will require parental notification and consent for a school to alter the name or pronouns of a child aged 15 and under, while notification is required for 16 or 17-year-olds. So basically, parental rights here, parents have to be informed when they're socially transitioning. So if they're changing the name, their pronouns, or how they dress, that's social transitioning. Parents need to know. They need to know when they want to preach their gender propaganda to their kids so they can opt out from it. No hormone therapies or puberty blockers for those aged 15 and under. And let's make sure we got all this straight. So yeah, 15 and under not be able to use puberty blockers or undergo hormone therapy, except for those who've already treatment. Those age 16, 17 will be permitted to commence hormone therapies for gender reassignment and affirmation purposes, so long as they are deemed mature enough for those decisions. And it also bans um, minors age 17 and under top and bottom surgeries, which seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do for young people who can't possibly understand the consequences of these decisions because they just simply haven't grown into their adult bodies and brains yet. Brains being an important part of that. So it all sounds reasonable to me. Now let's take a look at a reason why this might be important. These kinds of decisions might be important.
I'll never have my breast back. A reconstruction will do nothing for me, and it might make things worse actually, because I've had some complications pop up this year with the grafts. I have to cover them up with bandages, or else they'll I don't know what's going on with them. I tried to consult my surgeon about it, and she didn't really investigate. He gave me advice that made the complications worse even, and actually temporarily gave me an infection. But I have to bandage up every day so that it doesn't like leak all over my clothing or bedding. And
Jesus.
From the hormones and blockers, I've been experiencing some joint pains, mainly in my arms, my legs, and my back. And
Yep.
I still have issues with my urinary tract. I have to use the restroom pretty frequently, and I didn't even know that this was possible. This is like a pretty huge quality of life issue that I'm experiencing, and I'm just not really getting any help for it. And on top of that, I do hate to speak about it, but I'm experiencing sexual dysfunction at the age of 18. That's something that women usually go through when they're in their 40s to 50s.
Right.
How was I supposed to know?
So let's talk for a moment about how you got your lawyers and where you are on the legal battlefront.
So not only is...
So that's Chloe Cole, and she was told, her doctors told her parents that when she was, I think, 14, that, well, the question was, would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son? That was what was posed to the parents. Okay, so that's gender affirming care. That's what they call gender affirming care. And that is heartbreaking and tragic. Any sane people can see that. Any sane person will listen to that and go, okay, you know what, maybe caution should be advised here instead of just rushing it through. As if instead of just pretending that every bit of propaganda is real. I mean, it's just common sense, isn't it? I mean, if the cure for suicidal ideation is mutilation, maybe that's not the cure. Maybe that's not going to... I know I'm going out on a limb here. It sounds crazy. Maybe not mutilating children is a better idea. Maybe that will... maybe not mutilating children might lead to better outcomes for them, as opposed to mutilating them for the sake of some, gender religion. That's why I feel like half the time I feel like I'm in an alternate universe. This is so obvious. They keep saying it's going to, acting as if every kid who's confused are going along with what frankly looks like a fad. I mean, this isn't something we've been grappling with for decades, right? It feels like this all started coming to the fore. I mean, a week ago, it's been a few years, I guess. So it's bizarre to see like almost the entire Canadian media acting as if these very, very moderate ideas about restricting life-changing treatments, I guess we'll call them, on children who can't possibly understand the consequences of what they're doing or what they're going to be like in 10 years or 5 years or 20 years. They're freaking out because in Alberta, nobody's going to be able to mutilate children. And I'm telling you, people like this, people like Chloe Cole here, they don't get any airtime on Canadian news. Not interested. Why? Well, you know why. You just watched it with me. That's why. Because it might make people question their narratives and their political goals. People might say, hold on a second. Okay, wait a second. This isn't what they told me this was all about. You thought this was all wonderful rainbows and stuff. No, there are many stories like this. There's a long trail of tragic stories of broken lives of young people who were fooled by adults, pardon me, who should have known better. Hold on one sec. Sorry, I keep getting things in my throat. Anyway, where was I going with that? Yeah, I mean, it's like an alternate reality when you see entire institutions that have just gone for something that is clearly insane. It is clearly insane. I mean, it's not like, okay, if a child has, early breast cancer, okay, well, okay, you have to do something at that point, right? It's like it's like the last option. Now it's just like, oh yeah, kid shows up to a doctor, says, I saw a bunch of TikTok videos and I think I'm a boy now. I mean, they start them on that road to permanent medicalization in Canada. They have to do it. Doctors have to do it. They could lose their license. Again, if the treatment is just unnecessary mutilation treatments that will affect them for their entire lives, sterilization, if that's the treatment for something that looks very much like a mental disorder, maybe there's a red flag there. Maybe that's not the way to go. HRC says gender worship. Yeah, it really is. It's entirely religious, this thing. It's like a new religion. It's a new kind of dark spirituality or something, or cult, or it's all of those things. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to keep coughing because I've got something in my throat tonight. I'm gonna keep drinking to try and get it out, but it's gonna keep happening. Let's see. Liberal Party. So here's from the Liberal Party of Canada, Justin Trudeau's party. Pierre Poilievre, that's the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and his Conservatives remain silent on policies that harm the LGBTQ2 community. Again, I don't see what the L's, the G's, the B's, or the Q's have to do with any of this. But again, they create this pseudo group, which is they're not all the same. They're not all the same thing. They don't all have the same interests, but they create this thing to try and give it more power. We will keep fighting for a safe and inclusive future for all Canadians. Is it really safe, though, to be giving teenagers double mastectomies, to giving them puberty blockers so that their bodies will never form properly? Sterilizing kids? Is that really the safe future for all Canadians? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel like that to me. The Federal Conservative Party advised its MPs not to comment publicly on Alberta's new transgender medical care and education policies. So, what really happened? Okay, so let's take a look here. Here's what from the Globe and Mail. Here's what Poilievre. Here's the actual instructions to the Conservative MPs. It notes that parents should be the decision makers on how they raise their kids. Okay, that's obviously common sense. The internal email then goes on to highlight that provincial governments have jurisdictions over areas such as education and healthcare, and says premiers should be left to determine policies in those spheres. The right of adults to exercise their freedoms and live how they want to, perfectly reasonable. All Canadians deserve respect regardless of factors, including but not limited to sexuality and gender identity. This is all perfectly reasonable. But Justin Trudeau sees this as a massive, it's being promoted as a wedge issue, as being entirely political in Canada. And I'm just not going to make that assumption about Danielle Smith and the UCP in Alberta. I mean, to me, this is just such an obvious thing in terms of human rights. Like these, as far as I'm concerned, this is adults abusing children horribly. The people who you know who give this gender affirming care, what they call euphemistically as gender affirming care. I mean, in a sane world, that would mean telling the child that, no, you're fine just as you are. You don't need to be in a different body. And we can't actually give you a different body anyway, not in the way that you want. Gender affirming would be, no, you're fine as you are. Let's get you comfortable in your own skin. I don't know. It feels like common sense to me, but who am I? Danielle Smith believes Alberta UCP policies on trans youth are supportive. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith stood behind her government's recently announced policies regarding transgender youth, gender-affirming care, sex education, and parental notification. Let's see, we've been through this. She said, we are supporting kids in their right to make decisions about their own journey at a time when they're mature enough to make those decisions. So when they're not actually children. Although still you've got 16 and 17-year-olds that are able to take puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. So, which I still think is an abomination, but let's see. Age 16 is when they can begin hormone therapies, and age 18 is when they'll be able to commence top and bottom surgery. I imagine there are a lot of people who are going to be 19 or 20 or 25. We're going to look back and think, thank God I couldn't do that in Alberta. Thank God. We just think that the responsible way of approaching this issue is so that kids are not precluded from all the future choices that come to them when they decide to make the decision that's going to have potentially serious ramifications on their reproductive health. That's common sense, is it not? I mean, it's much more that's much more rational than just sterilize them. Well, that kid's 12. They know what they're doing. It sure seems kind of obvious, especially, you can't, a 14-year-old can't go buy a pack of smokes or a case of beer. They can't drive yet. There's so many things that we just wouldn't trust them with. Why this one thing? It's just truly, it's alternate reality stuff, different timeline stuff. Quote, I am confident that Albertans do not want children to make irreversible decisions that impact their reproductive health. I'm confident that they don't think those are child decisions to make, and those are adult decisions to make. I'm also confident that parents love their kids and they want to know what's going on with their kids. It doesn't matter what perspective they come from. They want to make sure they're walking the journey with their child every step of the way. And this is, of course, regarding parents, schools having to inform parents of anything that's happening with their child's gender at school, if they're socially transitioning using different names or whatever. The first steps to a life of permanent medicalization. Let's see. AJ McLean says, officially, child abuse is if any of these parents let their kids do this. I don't see any way that it's not that. I really can't. Given the fact that these children can't possibly consent, they can't meaningfully consent to any of this stuff. They just simply can't know what they will be thinking in 5 years or 10 years, or when they've actually grown into their adult body and when their brains have actually matured, which doesn't even, their brains don't actually fully stop forming and arranging themselves until they're in their mid-20s, for God's sakes. I think that explains why I was such an idiot when I was 24. I don't know. All those parents need their heads checked. Yeah, I agree. It's actually baffling to me. It's baffling to me how any parent could fall for that. Even like with Chloe Cole here, who we heard from with her heartbreaking story. You know, her parents were told that again, the question posed to them was, would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son? Right? Even under that kind of pressure, and I mean, it's horrifying, right? Incredibly irresponsible. Whoever said that should never practice medicine again, in my opinion. But even with that kind of traumatic statement, still, you should still know better. It's such an insanely reckless thing to do. Let's see. Okay. So here's some polling that you might find interesting. Vast majority says schools should inform parents if children wish to change their pronouns or split over the issue of parental consent. So let's take a look. So this is a Canadian poll. Overall, for the entire country, you can see there's some difference between provinces here, but overall, at the very least, parents must be informed if their child wants to identify differently. You've got 78% across the country, which, to be honest, I'm surprised it's that low. But and again, it's different in different areas here. Saskatchewan is higher. That's 86%. Parents must be informed and give consent for this change. It's 43, 46, 43, 43% overall in Canada. 46, 43, 50% in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, almost 50%. Again, I'm very surprised that that's not higher. But at the very least, parents must be informed if their child wants to identify differently, is like 78% across Canada. So I kind of feel like, as much as the Canadian mainstream legacy media is wailing and crying and freaking out and pretending that this is very unpopular, no, I don't think this is unpopular. Across the country, I don't think it's unpopular. I think it's easily the majority view. No matter how much, I mean, we're starting to see, I think, the breakdown of the effect, of how effective media programming can be. Because I'm telling you, the Canadian media they would just trans every kid in Canada tomorrow if they could, and they'd spend the rest of their lives celebrating it. Now, of course, we have Trudeau here. Now, Trudeau sees this as a wedge issue. He thinks this will benefit him politically, which is why he does anything. He thinks it'll benefit him politically. Shall we hear what he has to say?
Love their kids. Canadian parents love their kids, and we want the very best for them, and we want them to be kept safe. LGBT youth across this country are among the most vulnerable to homelessness, to
among the most vulnerable. Well, first off, it's not LGBT, it's just T. So it's a subset of T, and the subset is children, and they're vulnerable, and his solution is to mutilate them. So that's Trudeau.
suicide, to a range of things that can harm them. We need to be there to defend them. We need to be there to protect them. And I know Canadians across the country are doing just that. It is telling that the week after welcoming far-right American conservative Tucker Carlson to her province to sit with him on stage, Danielle Smith has now moved forward with the most anti-LGBT policies of anywhere in the country. Canadians need to know that the federal government and all Canadians will be there to protect youth. As a federal government, we...
Okay, so the vast majority of Americans don't agree with you, though, Trudeau. This is the way he operates. All Canadians will... Okay, well, not all Canadians want to mutilate you or sterilize you, right? Before you can possibly have informed consent on any of that. AJ McLean says, we'll look back on this in 50 years and realize how dumb this was. I think it's going to be a lot shorter than that. I think it's going to be like 5 years. Nobody's going to want to admit being for this stuff in 5 years, I don't think, because by that point, we're going to start seeing the tsunami of lawsuits. It's already starting in other countries, right? There's a report out of the UK from the Tavistock Gender Clinic where there's 1,000 families planning to sue that clinic because of what they'd done to their children, essentially saying they had rushed us into it and they hadn't given us, they hadn't informed us correctly to give informed consent for any of that, right? But we'll get into that in a minute because I've still got that on the docket here. I said we're going to be going a while with this. We're already 46 minutes in. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot sooner. There's going to be a tsunami of lawsuits of people saying, now adults saying, why, demanding, you know, like, why did you allow this to happen? This is clear malpractice. This was wrong. There was never any scientific evidence backing any of this up. This was just a cult. And the people that were supposed to be protecting us didn't. They hurt us. It's not going to be 50. I'm telling you, it's not going to be 50 years. It's going to be a lot sooner than that. Because when the official position of a country is affirming care, which it is everywhere outside of Alberta now, of course you're going to have lots of confused kids being rushed into something they don't understand and being celebrated for it and getting a lot of attention for it and a lot of positive peer pressure from it. And of course, you're going to have a lot of people making a lot of kids making terrible mistakes because there's no guardrails. There's nobody to tell them. There's nobody along in that whole path towards medicalization to tell them, hey, hold on, this might not be what you think it is. Let's stop. Let's stop right now before we get into any puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or surgeries. Let's talk. Let's maybe get a psychologist in. Let's get some therapy, perhaps, like some counseling. Maybe let's look at some other underlying possible causes for your discomfort. There's going to be a landslide of lawsuits coming from this. Mark my words.
We will always be there to protect the most vulnerable, particularly vulnerable LGBT youth who need to know that there are people across the country there to fight for them. If Premier Smith wants to fight someone, stand with us and fight for Canadians on lower grocery prices, on affordable fuel, on more.
It's just the grossest cretin. I to be honest, I find it hard to listen to him. I find it hard to listen to. Every word that comes out of his mouth is calculated and cynical and a lie. I find it so difficult to listen to this man. And many, many Canadians actually say the exact same thing. They can't stand hearing him. It's like nails on a chalkboard because you know it's all just fucking evil. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. No, this is a bad human being, Justin Trudeau. Even this is just, I mean, how much does he believe in it? How much is he part of the gender cult, really? I'm not convinced that he really believes anything that he says. I think he would have done great in Nazi Germany. For one thing, you know, fascism is a left-wing movement too, so he would have fit right in. I just think he says what he has to say to keep and grasp onto power. Anyway, increasing number of European nations adopt a more cautious approach to gender-affirming care for minors. Again, we got to get rid of these euphemisms like gender-affirming care. AJ McLean says, we're talking about Trudeau here. My friends, my lefty friends are sick of him too. Yeah, I've got a friend who's, lifelong liberal, will not vote for him again. I don't know if he's going to vote for the Conservatives, but he's not voting for Trudeau. He's not very popular. He's actually less popular in Canada than Trump is in Canada, which is amazing, considering when you consider the tsunami of propaganda that comes out of Canadian media about anything American conservative, that's astonishing, especially Trump. Canadian media has been kind of obsessed with shitting on Trump. They absolutely hate him. I think they see that the relationship between, the Democrat Party and the Liberal Party in Canada and the Republicans and the Conservatives in Canada. I mean, the Liberals had Hillary Clinton at their last convention. So there's a kind of spiritual bond between the two. So they understand that how they cover American politics, that will affect Canadians' views on politics in Canada. And the fact that Trudeau is actually so Trudeau, who basically owns the CBC, right? Who gets just constant positive press, or at least it's manipulated to put him in the narrative is manipulated to put him in the most positive light possible, always. And Trump has nothing but negative press in Canada. It's astonishing that he would actually be more popular by a couple of points than Trudeau is. Yeah, that gives me hope. That white pills me. Right? That's a white pill to me. That, the programming can only take them so far. The propaganda can only take them so far before reality steps in and asserts itself. But let's get back to here. So, increasing number of European nations adopt a more cautious approach to gender-affirming care for minors. Again, I hate that fucking euphemism. Increasingly, European nations are adopting a more cautious approach to gender-affirming care among minors. In March, for example, the Norwegian Healthcare Investigation Board announced it would revise its current clinical recommendations with respect to gender-affirming care for minors. The updated guidelines would restrict the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and transition-related surgery to clinical research settings. Norway joins other European nations such as Finland, Sweden, and the UK. This is happening in other countries too. I believe France is also going in the same direction. And these are all countries that were ahead of the curve on this stuff originally in terms of actually doing this shit. And now they've taken a look at the data and they're taking a step back and going, actually, we're causing harm. This is actually hurting children, not helping them. There's no evidence that it's helping. In fact, it's making things worse. The things that they're warning about will happen if you don't do it. If you don't sterilize and mutilate children, right? They're actually more likely to happen if you do that. So, again, it shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. It's just kind of common fucking sense. All right. I mentioned the Tavistock Gender Clinic could face mass legal action. This is from June 2023. From 1,000 families of children who claim they were rushed into taking life-altering puberty blockers weeks after NHS shut it down in wake of damning report. Many of them were prescribed powerful drugs to delay onset of adolescence. Again, are you ever seeing something like this and you have to stop and go, wait a second, this is real? Prescribed powerful drugs to delay onset of adolescence. Well, what would be the purpose of that? It's so that they can kind of stunt their growth so that then they can surgically turn them into looking more like the thing that they can never actually be. And by the way, there's the end of the bloodline too, because no kids after that. I mean, how can that be real? But never any word of any of this stuff. Any of the stuff that's happening in Europe, you would not know about this in Canada. A lot of reason why stupid people, why credulous people, or just people with no conscience support this stuff in places like Canada is because they just don't hear about, they don't hear from the detransitioners. They don't hear about any of this. They don't hear about other countries like Sweden reversing course in this. Sweden, right? Isn't that like the North Americans, like socialist dream? Nothing can ever be as good as Sweden. Well, you know, they no longer agree with you on all of this gender stuff. To their credit. And here's an example. Calgary Herald, that's Calgary, Alberta. Advocates say UCP policy on gender pronouns is an attack on education. Really? Schools are supposed to be a safe place. Where do we go? Schools are supposed to be a safe place, a place for learning. But now there is this huge culture change being dictated where there is now a real sense of fear. So it's supposed to be a safe place and a space of learning. So what the fuck are you talking about gender for? Therefore, why are children being told they're born in the wrong body? Or teachers wanting to socially transition them? You're saying it's a space for learning, not for gender. But it's a space for learning, but also for gender transition. I guess that's a perspective here. It's also incoherent. These people, this guy, masculinity studies in education. Michael Kaler, professor in the Faculty of Education at University of Calgary, who specializes in masculinity and gender studies in Calgary. Masculinity and gender studies. So these are the experts that we hear from. Word expert doesn't carry the same weight it used to a few years ago, does it? I wonder why. These are the experts that they rely on. Somebody who specializes in masculinity and gender studies. So in other words, a bullshitter, somebody who knows nothing of value about anything, right? I don't need to be a professor of masculinity and gender studies to know that perhaps the cure for suicidal ideations in teenagers is not mutilating them. I stand by that. Absolutely. I don't think it matters if I don't have a degree in gender studies. I mean, have we all gone fucking mad? Well, I haven't, and you guys haven't, but I'm talking about everybody else, obviously. All right, so we're going to get off that. We spent almost an hour on it. So let's see. As in them says, expert definition is a drip under pressure. Well, I like expert, the people that were promoted on, have been promoted on TV over the last few years as experts have ruined the word expert. It's not our fault, it's their fault. So here we go. So we're off that insanity now. We spent a good hour on it, which is longer than I thought we would. But we're moving on. So we're moving on to all right, hold on one second. We still got some more chat coming through. Masculinity studies. Just throw on all Expendables movies back to back. That's what you need. And us and them says I showed up in time. Yeah, because we're not doing a super late night one. I'm thinking I'll probably start doing these earlier now instead of like in the middle of the night because it's too late and I get tired and it sucks for everybody. So why would I do it? Masculinity studies, just throw on Expendables movies back to back. That's all you need. Yes, but I think that the point of masculinity studies is to shit on men. That's the purpose of it. To figure out why the Expendables movies are toxic. That would be the purpose. Maybe they'd show it in their class to show how awful men are, right? That would be the point of it. Yeah, these are all just cult, aspects of the cult, facets of the cult. But anyway, here we are. Here we are with the Machete Professor. The Machete Professor is back. I did a video on this back when it first came out. The Machete Professor, who held a machete to a reporter's throat. This was going back, I think, about a year ago. And you can subscribe to my channel if you want to watch that video and many, many others more. Most of my videos, by the way, are not live. I do 5, 6, 7 minute long videos, 4 minute long videos that are like edited and they're all put together nicely and stuff. That's not just me rambling out here without a net. Although I'm also putting out clips from these live streams as well. And I clean them up a little bit and try and put them into 5-minute bits. But anyway, subscribe and you can watch all that stuff. So I did a video on this college professor who, literally held a machete to a reporter's throat when he went to ask her about her awful, horrific behavior at the university, where she had showed up to a table that some conservative students had set up and, basically made a scene. And it's just an embarrassing, far leftist lunatic. So she was fired from a university, and then she was immediately rehired because, of course, by another university. And now is being fired again for because of course, anti-Israel remarks. But it goes a little bit. I mean, we have to see what she actually did here. So here she is. So I guess there was an event, some pro-Israel event, which you're allowed to have it, should be allowed to have it at colleges. And she's sent it out, and it's got pictures of cockroaches all over it, right? So the meaning there is pretty clear. How to defeat anti-Israel activists. Look at this dirty fucking roach, former Bronx borough president, Ruben Diaz Jr., a Zionist lapdog. So, I'm so torn on some things because on one hand, I mean, this is totally unprofessional. I mean, it's also, the meaning is pretty clear. The cockroaches all over it. The other hand, these are the institutions that will kick you out whether you're a professor or a student for accidentally using a wrong pronoun, or saying that, like men can't be women, right? Or showing crime statistics, right? Or even just talking about them. So I have no sympathy whatsoever. And ultimately, I'm glad that the Machete Professor is getting fired, has been fired, because these people are awful, awful human beings. So I guess, I mean, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? These are the people that will not tolerate any dissent from them. I mean, they'll go so far as to hold a machete to your throat, apparently. Cooper Union has fired me because of a social media post I made about Zionists. Let's see. AJ McLean saying, here's a link to the course at the University of Calgary. And of course, it's got to focus on LGBTQ stuff. Yeah, the link's not coming through there. But no, of course. I mean, it's obviously going to. It's an obsession, right? The thing that still kind of astonishes me, like, Alberta is the most conservative province in Canada. And, but the universities are still totally infested with the woke rot. Even still, the institutions are still run by lunatics. They've managed to infiltrate every institution, even in the most conservative places. She says, this is fascism. Y'all are learning about it in real time. Fascism, you don't say. Now, people often make the point that the anti-fascist, sure seem a lot like actual fascists themselves. And I don't think it's a mistake. I mean, fascism is the biggest lie of the 20th century and this century still, is that Fascism is a right-wing movement, right? It doesn't care about the individual. The Nazis were National Socialists. They weren't confused about what they were. So it's only natural for these people, these far leftists, to act like fascists because it is a left-wing movement. There's not really, I mean, if you just change, identity, race, gender for class, it's the same as communism, really. It's just, you've got the Soviets that are, class communists, and the Nazis were race socialists. So, but the amusing thing, well, not amusing, the kind of really insanely irritating thing is that they accuse everybody of being the thing that they are. This is fascism. Y'all are making it, y'all are learning about it in real time. Yeah, actually, we think that you're the actual fascist. The professor who holds machetes to people's necks. Dr. Cheryl says, thanks for all your hard work. And she's from Washington, D.C. Well, hey, hope you're having a great night. Thanks for checking in. Hope to see more of you in the chat. It's way more fun for me when people are in the chat. It makes the whole experience a lot more enjoyable. It gives me lots of energy to keep going. Because otherwise I feel like I'm not talking to anybody sometimes. Let's see. The university's Jewish community was relieved to hear about Rodriguez's termination, referring to her comments as despicable. So I guess the real question here is, why would anybody give the Machete professor another chance? Because you already know that she's the Machete professor, right? So usually, like, Machete anything is a red flag. Like the Machete baker, or like the Machete milkman, or Machete paperboy, the Machete Uber driver. Like, just anything with like Machete in front of it is normally, I think, a red flag, isn't it? For me, it is. Like if I get a burst pipe or something, I'm trying to find a plumber and I come across, okay, Machete plumber. No, I'll move on to the next one. So anytime you've got Machete in front of anything, again, it's a red flag. Probably a good idea to move on, right? Like, even if she didn't literally have, Machete professor on her resume, right? They still knew that she was the Machete professor. It should have been like, oh, here's one here. Oh yeah, this is the one that with the machete. Yeah, let's keep looking. Do you want to go to the Machete restaurant tonight? No, I don't. I'd rather go to the restaurant that doesn't have the machetes. I don't know how you guys feel about it. That's just how I feel about it. People doing things with machetes. Anyway, Elon Musk, Biden intentionally flooding U.S. with illegals to create permanent majority, a one-party state. The Machete teacher. Oh dear. Oh dear. What do you guys think of this? Like, there's a bunch of reasons why Biden would be intentionally, because I mean, I don't think, like, I think I can speak openly here, right? I think I can speak openly with you guys. Like, it's clear that Biden is intentionally flooding the U.S. with illegals. Like the whole suing Texas to try and get them to take down the border barriers and stuff, right? Like, it's pretty obvious that this is his policy. This is what he wants, right? Everything he says around it is a total lie. Clearly, the goal is to bring in as many millions of new people for whatever purpose as possible. So one obviously would be to create a permanent majority, as Elon Musk is saying here. But I've also heard talk, I mean, like across Europe, they're talking about instituting a draft there, and like Sweden and Finland, and a lot of war talk there. And the recruiting numbers have been way down for some reason since the army went woke. So they're having trouble recruiting people. Let's see, the world seems to be on fire since Biden took over. And they're talking about giving citizenship in exchange for service in the military. And there seems to be, from the videos I've seen, an awful lot of fighting age men going across the border. So what do you guys think of that? Is that a possibility? They're cooking up something. They want to send a bunch of illegal immigrants to Ukraine, maybe? Or maybe they're preparing for something with China and Taiwan? Is it partially just to destabilize the country? I don't know. I mean, one obvious one I think we can say with certainty is that it's to create a permanent majority politically, to bring in voters. That's obvious. Us and Them says it's money laundering. I don't know. It's an awfully strange thing, though. It's not something you would do if you had the best interest of the actual citizens of your country in mind, right? So they are not being considered in this. They have nothing to do with it. I mean, pressure to lower wages. Obviously, a mass influx of unskilled labor is going to lower wages for the working class, obviously, right? So that's one issue. Is it a combination of them all? It's certainly got to be a combination of at least a couple of those things, don't you think? But what does Musk say here? Let's see. He slammed President Joe Biden this week for intentionally flooding the United States with millions of illegal aliens, saying that he was doing it because he wants to turn the U.S. into a one-party state that Democrats control. Let's see. AJ McClain says, grant them citizenship for service, and the establishment left gets the double win there. Votes and soldiers. So, yeah, I guess so. I mean, again, the goal is obviously not the interest, and is not in the interest of the American citizen, obviously, right? Just as the mass migration that has happened under Trudeau in Canada is clearly not for the benefit of the Canadian citizen. And we know that because everything keeps getting fucking worse. Even though they tell us it's wonderful and it's a great thing. Well, they've been telling us that for decades now, and everything just kept getting worse. So I think it's safe at this point to just assume that they're full of shit and they're lying, and they knew it wasn't true all along. Musk's remarks come after more than 302,000 illegal aliens were encountered on the U.S. southern border in December, the highest one-month total in history. 300,000 in 1 month. Jesus. And that's just the ones they know about. Musk shared a screenshot of a 2021 news article from the Associated Press that showed how Biden created the pull factors that attracted hordes of illegal aliens. Quote, Biden to prioritize legal status for millions of immigrants. Just out of the kindness of his heart, I'm sure. Quote, this is from Musk. Biden's strategy is very simple. Get as many illegals in the country as possible. 2, legalize them to create a permanent majority, a one-party state. That is why they are encouraging so much illegal immigration. Simple, yet effective. This explains why there are so few deportations, as every deportation is a lost vote. As happened this week, you can literally assault police officers in broad daylight in New York and be released with no bail, give everyone the finger, and still not be deported. Outrageous. There we go. That's one of the guys that was assaulting the police officers in New York City, illegal immigrant, released without bail, and yeah, giving people the finger as he's walking past. So that sure seems like a bad idea. Why? Why would anybody want that? Well, they'd want it if they don't actually care about you. Musk continued. In the Bet You Didn't Know category, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas issued written guidance making it clear that, one, illegal presence alone is not grounds for deportation. So just imagine that. Illegal, you don't have to imagine it, I suppose. Illegal presence alone is not grounds for deportation. Criminal charges, convictions, or gang membership alone are not enough for deportation. You basically have to be a convicted axe murderer to be deported. That's because every deportation is a lost vote. Yeah. Who actually wants that policy? Boy, oh boy. So that's why they hate Elon Musk, I guess, right? Well, it seems like there's he's being persecuted anew by the Biden administration every week. That's why they hate him. I mean, obviously the whole Twitter thing, right? I mean, they had Twitter locked down before Elon Musk bought it, right? Just direct contact with like the White House and the FBI and every agency under the sun. And I'm sure that's still going on to some extent, but there clearly is a difference regarding speech and what's allowed to be on there from when he took over from than before. There is a clear difference, and they don't like it. You know, partial control isn't enough. They need to know that when they say, when they put the boot down, that it's going to be unquestioning. And that doesn't appear to be the case now. So, and I'm not shilling for Musk here. I'm just seeing what I've observed. All right, let's go to Twitter. Let's take a look. All right, Glenn Greenwald is talking here about. So Tucker Carlson has been in Moscow. So the speculation is that he's going to do an interview with Putin. Maybe there's something being released tonight. Maybe there's something that's been released since I started this live stream. If anybody's seen anything, let me know. But obviously this is going to anger all the right people. Tucker Carlson has been in Moscow for the past 3 days, according to Russia's MASH outlet. He was spotted at the Bolshoi Theater today. Adam Kinzinger says he is a traitor. So he's a private citizen going to possibly interview Vladimir Putin. Does that make Tucker Carlson a traitor? Well, I don't think so. I think that's something somebody in a free country should be able to do. But let's see what Glenn Greenwald has to say about it. That's a journalist or any American becomes a traitor by visiting a foreign country we're not at war with and interviewing its leader is in equal parts demented, stupid, and authoritarian. But this McCarthyite jingoism is also fully normalized in liberal discourse. Yeah, so I mean, this is what the liberals are saying now, right? They've really, really gone against their free speech. The liberal left is, really, we should stop using the word liberal because there's nothing liberal about it. These are illiberal, authoritarian leftists. right? So we really just kind of need to dispense with the word liberal because there just aren't enough left of them anymore. U.S. politicians have always spoken with, and U.S. journalists have interviewed foreign leaders of all kinds, including the U.S.'s adversaries and Russian leaders. But liberal discourse is now a replica of the worst McCarthyite abuses and think it's treason. So back on liberal again. Now, I would actually say Glenn Greenwald himself is at least closer to that traditional liberal mold than, but certainly than, legacy media now, right? Like if you approve of free speech, right, and you're very skeptical of censorship, then you are, that is what liberal used to actually be. Now, I think Glenn Greenwald on some of his economic stuff is maybe a little bit more, he's definitely more left-wing than I am. And I would certainly not call myself a liberal anymore, not at this point in my life. But I think he's kind of in that. So the modern left considers Glenn Greenwald to be right-wing now, right? So they consider him alternately like a fascist, or even though fascism really is a left-wing thing, but anyway, that's what they say. He's considered to be right or far right or conservative now because he is holding on to his kind of more traditional liberal values, right? And the people that hate him, that are being referred to as liberals, are not liberals. They are actually leftist authoritarians. So let's just to clear that up. Bill Crystal, Bill the Bloody Crystal. I didn't like Jane Fonda going to Hanoi in 1972, and I don't like Tucker Carlson going to Moscow in 2024. But I'm just an unsophisticated, old-fashioned Scoop Jackson Democrat, John McCain Republican. And there's an obvious point to be made here, which Glenn Greenwald makes. The U.S. was at war with North Vietnam. The U.S. is not at war with Russia, even though the neocons who now dominate and are beloved by the Dem Party wish it were. At least this warmongering maniac honestly describes himself as what he is, a Democrat. Yeah. So personally, I want to know. I hope that Tucker does interview Putin because I want to know what he thinks. Now, of course, it's going to be self-interested, right? It's going to be manipulation of some sort, but I still want to hear it, even if just so I can hear the manipulation techniques. Will some of what he says be true? I don't know. I mean, nobody will know unless we actually see it, and that's what that's what the establishment forces so desperately want to prevent. So they're so angry at Tucker Carlson because they just don't want anything that might provoke thought amongst the population. But again, I mean, I don't think that could be getting released right now, that interview, or maybe it never happens. But that's the speculation. What do you guys think? Do you think he should go and talk to Putin, or do you think that or he shouldn't? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. I personally think it's a good thing. I want more information, not less. Well, AJ McLean is saying at least we'll now be able to see what Putin's thinking. Yeah, like I want to know that. The media just tell us what he's thinking. Yeah. Like I actually want to hear it from his mouth, right? And I go in as an adult, right? Not naive, knowing that, okay, this is obviously going to be self-serving, but I still want to hear it. I think I'll have a more complete knowledge, at least in the it will give us some insight into Putin's thinking, right? Or at least some insight into how he hopes to manipulate. I mean, this is all valuable information. I mean, I don't think that Putin is this great guy. I think he's a very bad guy, right? But the world is full of bad guys. And I don't want to be kept in the dark as to what they're actually saying. We're better off knowing things than not, in my opinion, because I think that we're all adults and we can handle it. So this is interesting. So we've seen some people kind of transforming their views recently. John Fetterman, quite famously, is starting to sound actually kind of reasonable on some things as he's regaining his brain function. He's becoming more conservative. It almost, I mean, he's not conservative, right? But some of his stands lately would actually absolutely get somebody tarred as conservative, right? Now we got Michael Rapaport. Now, he first actually started making noises a few months ago. And it was around the influx of the, tens of thousands of migrants into New York. And he was freaking out about it. And he said that voting Trump was not off the table for him. He still called Trump a pig dick in his signature charming style. So he still kind of got that. He doesn't want to let go of his Trump derangement syndrome, but it sounds like he's actually considering voting for him because he's so appalled at what's happened under the Biden administration. Also, too, he's a huge Israel supporter. So he's also appalled at a lot of the stuff he's seen coming out of the media regarding that conflict right now. Voting for Trump is on the table, says far-left comic Michael Rapaport. Well, he's really an actor, I think, isn't he? After seeing migrants beat down cops in Times Square. This week, Michael Rapaport, a comedian known for his strong opposition to former President Trump, delivered a vehement critique on the immigration issues in New York City and the current administration's priorities under President Biden. He implied that a failure by Biden to address these domestic challenges could lead to considering the option of voting for Trump. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has been completely unhinged when it comes to Trump. Completely unhinged. And, there's a line for everybody. Or at least almost everybody. Where reality or their ideology does not conform to reality anymore. And they realize that. So woke and far left and reality in opposition, well, reality just has a better argument. And there's a line for almost everybody. Some people are too far gone, just too far into the cult, but there's a line for almost everybody where they will run into reality and just accept it. Because the alternative just doesn't make sense to them anymore, right? And it looks like he's maybe found that line. Let's take a look at his video here.
This is why when I say voting for pig Donald Trump is on the table, voting for pig Donald Trump is on the table. The other day in New York City, 6 illegal aliens jumped a New York City cop, NYPD's finest. They jumped a New York City cop in Times Square and were arrested and released without bail. I know it's a city thing. I know it's a state thing. I know all that. I know all that. Okay? Stay with me. Released without bail. Came out of the courtroom on some Tupac raising the middle finger with the Detroit Red Wings jersey. Let me tell you something. What the is the world coming to? If you could be from another country, beat up a cop in New York City and walk out with no bail, what the is the world coming to? What the is the world?
My question is, why isn't everybody in New York saying this, making a video and putting it out saying that? I mean, it is fucking bonkers, is it not?
Coming to. I know Mayor Adams, you're from Brownsville, Brooklyn. I know this. Like, what the have I gotten myself into? Stay with me. On the same day that happens, Cadaver Joe Biden issues an executive order about 4 quote-unquote settlers in Judea, Samaria, aka the West Bank. Some troublemakers, 3 of the 4 have already been arrested. You issue an executive order about 4 troublemaking ups who've already been arrested in Judea, Samaria, while there's a war going on, while there's 100 plus hostages still being held in Gaza. You're talking about that, but you got nothing to say about beating up cops in New York City, the greatest city on earth. Maybe it's not. Maybe my city is not the greatest city on earth anymore. If you could beat up cops, in the quote unquote greatest city in the world and be released without bail, are we the greatest city on earth? Cadaver Joe Biden, we see you. We see you. Don't worry about those in Israel. Bibi got them. Israel will take care of them. Worry about cops getting beat up in Times Square and walking out with no bail like the Tupac Shakur. Worry about that shit. This is why voting for pig Donald Trump is still on the table.
See, he still hates Trump, but it turns out he might rather vote for Trump, who he absolutely hates, than for Biden, just because the reality of Biden is worse, right? Like, he doesn't like Trump's personality, but the reality that he has to live in under Biden. And it's true that, New York is it's a state, and it has a governor, and it has a mayor, and a lot of it's all under their control, right? But here's a guy who was, a lifelong leftist, maybe not as far left as everybody thought he was, just kind of a loudmouth maybe, who he's Jewish, and he's seen huge crowds that, the second news broke about October 7th, marching and cheering, like while bodies were still warm on the ground. I mean, no reaction from Israel yet, right? Chanting, about jihad, right? And he's going, wait a second. And then he sees that this is actually quite popular in like universities, for instance. And amongst other leftists, it's quite popular. And he's going, wait a second, these guys aren't my friends. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe if you'd been paying attention, you would have known that earlier, right? He's seeing his city go to shit, crime through the roof, right? Illegal immigrants beating up cops and being released without bail immediately. Right? These are all signs of civilizational breakdown. And maybe because he's male, he's more likely to notice that, be sensitive to that, right? Maybe, I don't know how often he thinks about the Roman Empire, but probably occasionally. So reality now is turning out to have a better argument than all of the woke propaganda, the fantasy land of woke propaganda. Let's see. AJ McLean says he finally looked in the mirror and asked, "Are we the baddies?" I think something like that has happened. And that's an awful lot of far-right rhetoric coming from his mouth in that video. Well, yeah, I think he's probably already been made an honorary far-rightist, I guess. I imagine he's being attacked by the left mercilessly on social media, and they're letting him know that he's not one of them anymore. Because that's what they do. They police their own harder than anybody else, right? They hate apostates. Apostates are the worst. One of their own that turns against them on anything cannot be tolerated. They're more dangerous than anybody else. Because I think they have the opportunity, more of an opportunity to convince other people from their cult that they're making a mistake. And they're misguided. Misguided is a nice way of putting it, I guess.
This is why when I say
all right. So here's a bunch of people protesting the new policies, gender policies. They haven't been enacted yet. It'll be like 6 months. But, basically 16 and under can't get puberty blockers in Alberta. You can't get gender surgery under 18. And they're going to try and protect women's sports from biological males competing in them. They're going to make sure that schools cannot keep a secret from parents if their child is undergoing a social gender transition at school. So parents must be involved at all levels all the time. And these people are opposed to that. So they heard that the province is not, that children are not going to be mutilated in their province anymore, and they're furious about it.
It's much worse. It's erasure. It's suppression. It's oppression, and it's wrong.
For the last 2 weeks or so, since I heard the news that we would be hearing a policy on parental rights coming from the provincial government, I have had a knot in my gut, in the pit of my stomach.
Yeah, that's the former mayor of Calgary. His name is Nenshi, and he's got a pit in his stomach since he heard about there was going to be parental rights in Alberta. Again, I keep saying it every live stream. I feel like I'm in an alternate universe. Completely and totally insane. I mean, so recklessly irresponsible these people are. Of course, parents should be involved in every aspect of their child's physical and mental health. How is this controversial? How did that become a controversial point of view in Canada? I mean, Canada, all of this fad, this social fad. I mean, it feels like it started, 30 minutes ago, and yet so rapidly has it taken over. I think it's because that the institutions had been secretly taken over long before then. And now it's just the moment when they are really asserting themselves and their insane beliefs. So what's this? This is San Francisco. This person's woke kindergarten reaction after October 7th. This person is says Israel has no right to exist, trying to end y'all. He. That sounds like a little bit anti-Semitic and genocidal, doesn't it? This is somebody who's involved. This is somebody who received actually $250,000, I believe, from the government to affect or to organize a kindergarten programs for kids. A crazy person. We're not going to linger on that. It's actually too depressing. I like this, though. When guys show you a YouTube video, you have to understand that's a sign of great respect in their culture. That is 100% true. It is a sign of great respect. Honey, look at this video. I want you to check out this video. It is a sign of great respect. I know you guys agree with me. When will the Rainbow Brigade get it through their heads? Just leave kids out of it. Nobody cares what kind of sex you have. Just stop telling kids about it. It's not too much to ask, is it? I mean, my personal belief is I don't care what adults do. Right? Why does it matter to me? Somebody's sexuality or whatever is, to my mind, the least interesting thing about them. What else have you got? Are you smart? Are you funny? Are you responsible? Are you somebody who can be counted on? Are you good at an instrument? Can you play piano well? These are all interesting things. Who you sleep with, what your sexual, this is the least interesting thing about anybody. Who gives a shit? It's just a physical act that everybody does anyway. Just some people do it different. Don't care. Should adults be able to change their gender and get operations and things? Sure, do whatever the hell you want. But, don't expect everybody to have to play along with it or pretend that you're really the thing that you are. It's fine if you want to do that, but you can't expect everybody else to believe it or pretend to believe it. It just, you're kind of taking away other people's autonomy there, right? It has to be kind of a give and take in society. I think kind of almost everybody, every reasonable person thinks that at this point. You know, you do what you want to do, but you know what? As the sign says, stop telling kids about it. Why do you want to involve our kids? So this is interesting. Every post says the same thing. And what do these posts say? It says, honest Canadian citizen here. I don't get why many people hate Trudeau. I think he's one of the best prime ministers in the country right now. Well, he's the only prime minister in the country. So, he needs time to do this. We should back him and trust the process. We can do this. Let's go, Canada. Now, it's not signed Chairman G, but yeah, it's all of these. It's the same language or extremely similar language from all these fake accounts. Now, I don't know if I heard that it was connected to Trudeau in some way, connected to the Liberal Party, you know, or been contracted out to somebody, I wouldn't at all be surprised because Trudeau and the Liberal Party are absolutely that cynical. But also it leaves the possibility open to, because the language, would I be surprised if there's like a tweet mill in China or somewhere in Canada, but being paid for by China to just pump this stuff out? Obviously not. We already know that China favors Trudeau because they see him as being weak and malleable. And, you know, they'll get the best results by having him in. We still need a real proper look into Chinese election interference in Canada. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I often wonder on Twitter, how much of it, or X now, right? How much of it really is real people? And how much of it is just this? You know, when you get out, I mean, there's a lot of comments like this that get into onto your feed when you say anything political. I also see them in the comments for YouTube videos as well. So what percentage is actually just, you know, psyops? It's probably more than we think it is, or most people think it is. Gays against groomers. Imagine crying because kids won't be sterilized or have their body parts cut off anymore. So this was in Edmonton, Alberta. So this is related to the whole new policies for gender in schools and for children in Alberta. So let's hear what this person, I haven't listened to this myself yet, but let's take a listen.
To all the queer and trans youth out there, just know that you are so loved and we're going to be with you for every step of this fight. We love you so much.
I just want to ask, I want to ask this person, have you ever talked to a detransitioner and heard their stories? Because there's many of them. There's a lot of them. And I think there's going to be many, many, many more. I don't think so, because I think for the modern left, it is really just about, it's all directional. So if it feels like it's left, so if it feels like the people that surround them would be okay with it, right? They'd all look at each other and gauge, does this thing feel left-wing? Is that the right direction? Yeah. Okay. That we all go. They all go. It's just what feels left. And introducing any kind of dissonance into their thinking, right? Like common sense, or like in the case of this person, talking to a detransitioner, can't help them, because as we know, the left loves to police itself more than anything, right? So any dissent, one step backwards, or just simply not moving further left with them, is enough to get you called, it's enough to turn you into an apostate and a heretic and get you exiled from the group, viciously attacked. So there's no upside for them trying to actually understand any issue, because it can only be downside for them. right? Hearing any opposing view is a danger to their status, essentially. Because if they hear something that makes sense, that they just recognize is real, right? Here's a real issue, like detransitioners. Well, then they're going to have to confront that. They're going to have to deal with that mentally, right? Intellectually. And this can cause a great deal of discomfort for them because they know that if it doesn't feel left wing and something that everybody else is going along with, they're in trouble. They're going to get exiled. People are going to hate them. So there's no upside to it. So you see people like this crying like that. Well, she's never thought about the issue deeply. She's never heard anything. She's never heard anything that would dissuade her from this, right? She can't. And if she does, you got to block it out immediately. So when the left seems so irrational and so immune to common sense, I think that's why. Let's see, what do we got? Oh, let's go back. Oh, hold on. Bookmarks. I don't think we've gotten to the end of our stuff yet, have we? Manjeet found his true love in Canada just a week before his student visa expires. Well, that was lucky. He found his true love. It's a love story in Canada. Manjeet found his true love, and only a week before his student visa expired. Wow. That's just fate, isn't it? That's fate. That's what love can do for you. Anyway, just throwing that out there for you. Critical thinking should be the first thing taught to kids. This is from Elon Musk. Now let's take a look at this. This is actually a very good video. So let us watch this.
So these guys want to talk about J.K. Rowling? Is that so? What's going on with that? What do you want to know?
She's had a pretty controversial past. I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on it? Like, do you still like her work despite her bigoted opinions?
So let's get specific, though. Let's define bigoted opinions. What opinions are bigoted? We're going to treat this as a thought experiment. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong or what way to think. The whole point is to learn how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
So when you say bigot, you're starting with the conclusion that, given her bigoted opinions.
Yeah.
So first, let's start with, does she have bigoted opinions? So when you say bigoted opinions,
she has had a history of being extremely transphobic, I've heard.
Hey, you've heard. So what? Can you give me an example?
If you look at her Twitter, I think you could see a few things. If you want, I could try and find
see
something.
See if you can find one.
So, one of these tweets that she came out with in 2019, she said, "Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real."
So you find that bigoted? What do you find about
it? Was deemed transphobic. Like, I myself.
Do you find that transphobic yourself?
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I'm just going with what a lot of other people have said.
So let's pause it. Let's not go with what other people are saying. Let's try and
see. This is illustrating exactly what I was just talking about. A lot of other people have said, right? So that's the safe thing. J.K. Rowling is a transphobe because everybody around him is saying that. That's the acceptable thing to think. And now something is happening with this teacher that is uncomfortable, right? So, and let's just keep watching.
Learn how to critically think. So let's analyze the tweet ourselves. So that statement, do you see anything problematic disregarding other people's opinions?
She did try and pin some things on a specific group of people.
Where does she do that? Can you read that?
But force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real.
So when I hear that, I'm interpreting that as meaning if a woman says that, saying that there's a difference between men and female and then being attacked as transphobic, I think that's what she's saying by attacking someone for stating that sex is real.
That is exactly what she's saying.
Is that transphobic to you?
So, to me, no. Stating that sex is real is not transphobic. It's just a fact of life. It exists.
So is there anything you disagree with in that tweet?
In that tweet, I can't really see anything that I myself disagree with, but I can see why some people would think, oh, this is offensive. We can't have that here or something. Because
sure.
There's an apology tweet.
Let's read that. What did she say there? I haven't read that.
I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it is hateful to say so.
You see anything problematic there?
She's apologizing, so no, not really. If I could read it again.
It sounds like a very similar statement as what she was just saying. She's basically saying, like, I have nothing, to me, this is what I interpret it as, I have nothing against someone being trans.
Exactly.
It's your life, but you just don't get to impose on you can live how you want, I can live how I want.
Yeah.
And let's all,
Exactly.
So I guess now that we're looking at it like, oh, there's not much difference between me or her, do you think it's fair that that she's being attacked by a large group of people and people are calling her, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, you said, given the fact that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, how do you feel about Harry Potter? Now, retroactively looking at that statement, do you think that was the best way to phrase?
No, I feel like an idiot now.
It's okay though, but this is why we do this, to learn how to think.
So, I mean, that looks to me like the first time that guy's met any kind of resistance to those statements, right? Because just everybody in his sphere, they all just go with the same thing. It feels left, so therefore it must be, that's the safe thing to do. I'm just going to go with that. Feels left, feels right. Everybody's agreeing with this. Let's just go with that. And here is being confronted by somebody who's calm and rational and teaches them how to actually think through that. Right? That's what leftists desperately want to avoid, because there's no profit in them with that. There's no profit in it for them to have a more nuanced view. It can only really hurt them, right? So that guy now, he has he has a dilemma. So if that conversation comes up somewhere else, is he going to then think it through the way he just has been taught to here, or because that's risky, right? That can get him in trouble. That can get him disliked. Or is he going to just decide to say, I don't need the trouble. I'm just going to agree with everybody else. She's a transphobe. So, for somebody in that environment, it's a pickle for them, right? Again, they can't really benefit socially from it. Now, of course, they actually can by getting themselves out of that group and, surrounding themselves with rational people, with them, non-cult members, people who can tolerate different opinions, which is much better off. But I think a lot of leftists, that's a step too far for them. It's too dangerous. They don't want to change. They don't want to take the risk of being exiled. You guys can discuss that amongst yourselves for a second. I need to just run off for 1 minute. I'll be right back. All right, thanks for waiting, you guys. I'm back. So I've just noticed a comment here, which I need to comment on. And we're going back here. Manjeet found his true love in Canada just a week before his student visa expires. And Free Dick said, Manjeet is now man deep. And I had to bring that up because I think that it's absolutely beautifully juvenile, and I 100% approve of that joke. But, you know, there's probably a lot of, one thing I think is that it comes to mind, I don't know how to put this tactfully, there's probably a lot of folds going on because there's a lot of fat there, a lot of folds, you know? So it could kind of be hard to know exactly what, like in the back of a car, how to put this tactfully? Like in the back of a car, it'd be kind of hard to know what you're fucking. It could be like a knee, or you know, there's folds happening. So I don't know. I'm sure Manjeet is having a great time though anyway. And I'm happy for him. True love. Not everybody gets true love like that, especially a week before they're supposed to be kicked out of the country. AJ McLean says he's off to bed. Hey, thanks a lot for being in the chat and for listening. We'll see you next time, hopefully. Have a good night. Is that a picture of the big titty Canadian teacher in a straitjacket? I don't know. It's a bakery down there. Yeah. I think it's time we left that. I've got something funny for you guys. This has nothing to do with anything. It's just kind of funny.
Very serious about what they're doing.
Want to hear a joke?
Oh, geez.
Kids walking down the hallway of his house. They're screaming in his parents' bedroom. Opens the door. There's his father dressed only in chaps. Mother's dressed in a cheerleading outfit with nothing on her, and they're going at it. He says, Daddy, what's going on? He says, oh, just go to bed, sweetie. I'll tuck you in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, his father's walking down the hall. He hears screaming in his kid's bedroom. He opens the door. The kid's having sex with his grandmother. He said, Billy, what the hell are you doing? He said, it's not so funny when it's your mother, is it?
Hope you guys could hear that properly. That was good. Guess we're not working clean tonight. This I just found really funny. PETA UK. Turkeys don't want to be eaten. 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 Drew Peacock says, how do you know? Are you fluent in gobble gobble? You dumb fucking bitch. Is that an overreaction? I say no. That gets the Radio Baloney stamp of approval on that one. That needs even more applause. Barber, what you want? I want everyone to know that I'm offended by everything. Barber, say no more. It does say that, doesn't it? It does say exactly that.
I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
Sam isn't looking too good. I think Liz Cheney is a total hero. So here's Sam Harris' head on Hunter Biden. And okay, so here we go. This is what this is all about. Elon Musk says Sam Harris's mind has melted into goo. I think I'm going to make a video, like one of my regular videos about this tomorrow, but let's take a quick look now. Chief Nerd, Sam Harris says that propagandists like Tucker Carlson are making the border crisis look worse than it really is for Biden. So Tucker's making the border crisis look worse than it really is for Joe Biden. I don't know. I mean, is 8 to 10 million people? Nobody's quite sure how many exactly. Like, how could you make that look worse? Like, That's really bad. The idea that okay, well, let's just listen to this. Let's listen to him here. And I've said it before, but I used to think that lots of meditation was good for you. I'm not so convinced anymore. Something's happened to Sam Harris's brain.
So yeah, I wouldn't know what to expect of Trump in a second administration around Israel. I mean, I would assume he would support it, but the isolationist noises are at cross purposes with that. I mean, I view him as a moral lunatic who really thinks only of himself. So it's hard to predict exactly what he would do. But it's I'm much more worried, frankly, that Biden will suffer an erosion of support for for other reasons on kind of the opposite side of the political continuum, among independents and others who are worried about the southern border, for instance. I mean, you only need to see a few videos coming from the southern border and a few, arguably uncharitable framings of those videos by propagandists from the other side. I mean, someone like Tucker Carlson claiming that, look, this is Biden's policy, and then he'll show you people by the thousands coming into coming across the border without any sign that we know who they are, we can do anything about it. That I think a lot of people really care about, and especially in the aftermath of October 7th, right? The idea that we have a border that we just can't police, that we're not inclined to police, and and millions of people are coming to the country. We have no idea who they are, but we know at this point that they're not just Latin Americans looking for work. They're people from all over the world, and coming in here for who knows what purpose. You spin that up into a conspiracy theory, or just constrained fear of.
How is it a conspiracy theory? I mean, Biden sued Texas to try and prevent them from stopping people going across the border. How is that a conspiracy? No, I mean, openly, he sued them. He sued them to try and get them to take down border barriers. I mean, it's what happened to this man?
For the future, that's the issue I think he has to get a handle on, more than signaling that it's daylight between him and Netanyahu, where I think there should be daylight between him and Netanyahu, because I think Netanyahu is a fairly Trumpian and self-serving character at this point. He is somebody who is at least in part culpable for the problem Israel finds itself in.
So what happened to Sam Harris? I don't know. Let's go to the chat and see. RSN40 says Sam Harris is embarrassing himself more and more each day. And what did he? Yes, it's true. And what did he say here about Trump being a moral lunatic?
Among independents and others who are worried about the southern border, for instance. I mean, you only need to see a few videos coming from the southern border and a few lunatic who really thinks only of him. Noises are at cross purposes with that. I mean, I view him as a moral lunatic who really thinks only.
So he's talking about Trump there as the moral lunatic. So I recall, I don't have the video here, I'm sure you all saw it, where him talking about he didn't care if Hunter Biden had children's bodies based in his basement. It's still that the Trump being reelected was going to be the greatest catastrophe in the history of mankind, something like that. I think you kind of forfeit the right to call other people moral lunatics at that point. Friedrich says that, well, we've got a good one here, folks. And I'm going to get my finger ready over the clap button. Sam Harris looks like an unfunny Greg Gutfeld. I fucked it up. Hold on. Sam Harris looks like an unfunny Greg Gutfeld with AIDS. Bravo, sir. RSN40 says, emphasis on AIDS. Bravo again. And TDS as well. Yes. Yeah, he's got complete Trump derangement syndrome. And again, I mean, I think too much mindfulness meditation might might actually be bad for you. It seems like it's completely unmoored Sam Harris from reality. I'm talking about spinning up the millions of people crossing the border. What? I mean, how, in what universe is that not a massive deal? When you've got millions of people per year, again, estimates right now between 8 and 10 million people just since Joe Biden got into office. In what universe is that not? In what universe do you need to spin that up? It's bizarre. What happened to this man? I don't know, folks. It's freaking bonkers. Let's go to the comments. Let's see what people are talking about on this video. Well, Elon Musk said Sam Harris's mind has melted into goo. Maybe he had an aneurysm, also from Elon Musk, possibly. Something happened. Here, yeah, it's all in our imagination. Has Sam Harris become like an op? Is that what's happened? Like he's just actively now just spreading like crazy ideas on purpose. It's on the TV, so it must be true. Well, this is interesting. Maybe someone could forward Harris this video. It might help him understand what happened at the border. For anyone who is confused about the cause of the border crisis, here it is explained perfectly in a 40-second video from 2020.
First of all, every executive order this president has issued relating to the border and relating to dealing with the Hispanic community is going to be pulled back. We're not going to be fooling with that.
Won't that restart a brand new border crisis? I mean, what would you do with all those people in camps now waiting in Mexico?
It will if we don't do it well.
Those asylum seekers that are on the other side of the border now in camps going to be allowed to come and do their claims inside the United States, something that has not been afforded.
It's the first time ever you've had to seek asylum in a third country. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. First of all, every executive order this president has issued relating to the border and relating to dealing with the Hispanic community is going to be pulled back. We're not going to be fooling with that.
Won't that restart a brand new border crisis? I mean, what would you do with all those people?
So, I mean, it's kind of all right there, isn't it? You know? We've got more chat, more fire in the chat here. Sam got COVIDs, which disables your bullshit detector. COVIDs. That's a good one. I'm going to use that more often. I'm going to start using that now. I'm stealing that. COVIDs. Let's see. Let's see. The idea that we have a border that we just can't police and millions of people coming into the country and we have no idea who they are. This is not an idea. It's actually happening. Everybody knows this. How does he not know that? Again, I'm wondering at this point, like he can't be that stupid. Right? Is he on somebody's payroll now? Like what happened? Did somebody in a trench coat have a word with him? What exactly is going on with that man? Because he's not an idiot. Like he actually is a very intelligent man. It seems inconceivable. It's just inconceivable that he could actually be this misguided. Gotta wonder. Sam isn't looking too good. Only someone who has everything to lose would propagate this. This dude's closet is dark. Let's see. Propagandist Sam Harris called someone else a propagandist. Next, he'll probably tell us how great the economy is. I'm sure that was the next thing out of his mouth. Sam really needs to get help. Trump and COVID broke him. And I'm entertaining at this point that he's on somebody's payroll, or again, somebody in a trench coat had a word with him. I don't know. Let's see. Tucker. Well, this is super long, so we're not going to watch this. It's because he lost the ability to gain any input from other people. Arrogance melts the brain. That's Elon Musk's superpower. Even after such success, Musk seems to still question himself and listen to others. Let's see. Size 22 influencer branded perfect as she stuns in backless mini dress. So, a few live streams ago, there was a woman who was standing in front of a camera, and she was saying that going to the gym doesn't make you better than everyone else. And she was very smug about it. I think maybe she was giving everybody the finger or something. And the interesting thing about that woman is that she was wearing like a bikini top, and underneath the bikini top were what appeared to be an extra set of tits, and they were fat. It was just fat, right? So it looked like she had 4 tits because the fat was enough fat just hanging down to look like she needed 2 bikini tops. And I'm seeing again, look, this one also has 2 sets of tits. It's got one on the front and one on the back this time. The other one, it was 2 on the front. This time, it's 2 on the back. Is this a thing now? Radio streamer. Hey, radio streamer, how you doing? Good to see you. That's a major back tit. Yes. Yes, exactly. So we're all seeing the same thing here. Major back tit. Maybe I'll make this a little bit larger. Hold on. Can you guys see that better now? Look at that back tit. Now, this influencer was branded as perfect as she stuns in backless mini dress. Well, I am stunned. I will say that. I'm absolutely stunned. I was in New Orleans, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, and I saw a woman who actually had back tits as well, like that. It was like low cut on the back. Is that on purpose so it looks like so people will think that it's an extra set of tits? Because it kind of is, right? Freedick says Thunderback. And you know what? I forgot to give the applause for radio streamer there too, with some major back tits. Radio streamer says, please no more. I'll have to go off into a puppy palate cleanser. Yes, it's terrible. I guess we'll move on. I forgot to bring up the puppies for this one. Usually we have, for when things get really dark, we'll have some pictures of puppies that we could just clean our palate with, after seeing the horrible, dark things that we often have to go through on this channel because we have to bear witness to it. It's our responsibility to our ancestors. So maybe we'll pull up some puppies at some point. I don't think we're there yet, though. So, oh my God, the first person this is interesting. The first person to walk out of the Apple store with an Apple Vision Pro. This guy, he's got his Apple Vision Pro. It's the headsets, the virtual reality headsets. And he looks to me like he wants nothing more than to immediately get out of there, go home, so he can jerk off to some VR incest porn. Yep. No, it's a certainty. It's a certainty. It's the dark underbelly of all of this, of these VR things. You don't want to know what they're using these things for. I'm telling you that right now. You don't want to know.
I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's no good. The best match I have ever seen. So I thought this was kind of interesting. This looks like lingerie football league to me. Gonna have to turn the volume down. So I guess the question is, why is this not the top sport in North America? I don't know. I don't know why it isn't. It really should be. What do you guys think? Why isn't this more popular? I watched some lingerie fighting league, and that was pretty fun. I mean, it's a laugh. All right. What do we got next? I wonder if there's any good comments on this. Let's take a look. Nothing. Nothing. The perfect shot doesn't exist, they say. All right. Oh, Jesus. Uh-oh. You got to be careful with these things. I don't know I hope I didn't just get banned off YouTube for like that half a second of something that is not appropriate for on my live streams. This is why I'm always nervous about looking at the comments on these things, because you don't know what the hell's going to be on there. Yikes. Let's see. Freya Dick says that North America would let men into the league. It would be all men within 6 months. Radio Streamer says, reminds me of the Man Show trampoline. Yes, absolutely. Can you believe that used to be Jimmy Kimmel on the Man Show? Man, he really went downhill, didn't he? He really sold out big time. Let's see. MSNBC hosts an interview at a black barber shop, and it doesn't go as expected. Well, let's see what they have to say.
A little younger. There's some people in your orbit who are either voting for Donald Trump or considering it? For sure. A lot of my friends are obviously my age, so we're a little younger. We've only voted once, for a president. And Trump is kind of all we know. And they're kind of Trump and Biden. They're like, well, we were broke with Biden. We weren't with Trump. And that's kind of the only thing that I'm hearing over and over again, is that, well, Trump, we had money. Well, okay.
There's some people in your orbit who are either voting for Donald Trump or considering it?
For sure. A lot of my friends are obviously my age, so we're a little younger. We've only voted once, for a president. And Trump is kind of all we know. And they're kind of Trump and Biden. They're like, well, we were broke with Biden. We weren't with Trump. And that's kind of the only thing that I'm hearing over and over again, is that, well, Trump, we had money. Well, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what happens when, again, woke meets reality. Reality has a better argument because it's real, right? It's not all just slogans, and propaganda. Let's keep going. What's this here? Awake moms in the car with their kids. So what is this? I haven't watched this yet. Let's take a look. Oh,
That is full of chemicals. No, you cannot have McDonald's. We don't eat that. It's full of chemicals. It's not even food. See those lines in the sky? Yeah, those are not clouds. A Fauci ouchie. Okay, we don't take the Fauci ouchie. Got it? No, you cannot do a sleepover. You know we don't do sleepovers. When can you have a phone? You can have a phone when you're 18 years old. Say it with me. Corrupt government. I don't care if your friends have seen those movies. We don't watch that stuff. Yeah, honey, there's only men and women, okay? God designed you for a purpose the way that you were born. If someone ever tells you that you should eat bugs, don't listen to them. They're lying. Is that filtered water, though? Yes, honey, Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates are really good friends. So that should tell you a lot right there. Look at the label. Does it have red 40 in it? If it does, you cannot have it. No, you cannot have.
so I don't know if that's parody or what. I can't tell anymore, to be honest. Yeah, this is interesting. So it says CNN host Erica Hill was left speechless after their chief law enforcement analyst detailed the activities of the criminal illegals in the months since their arrival in the country. Let's hear what he has to say. And this is probably not going to be something that he's supposed to say on CNN.
Touch our police officers. We don't touch anybody. Thank you, everybody.
I mean, we're hearing a change when it comes to immigration in general from President Biden on down. To hear her talk about that, it is also directly related to the fact that these were police officers. Does that have any impact? Does that change anything?
Well, it's so complicated because, you know, you're a New Yorker, you move through the city every day as I do. We see these people, we touch these people, they're out looking for work, they're delivering our food, they're at the gas stations and the car wash. I mean, these are people who came in waves, you know, 170,000 probably to New York City. But within that group, this hardworking, you know, throngs of people in search of hope and a better life, there is this 1%er, you know, criminal element that looks at a different opportunity here. These individuals, I went over their rap sheets yesterday, multiple charges, grand larceny, robbery, attempted robbery, grand larceny, grand larceny. This particular crew operated on mopeds and scooters. They were doing organized retail theft. They were doing snatches on the street, iPhones, iPads, clothing, so on and so forth. One of them that they are still seeking has 10 charges on one day because he's part of a pattern that's been going on. And I'm looking at the dates that their arrest started, which is probably close to when they got here. They've only been here a couple of months. So what the detectives are telling me is they have crews here that operate in New York, do all their stealing, then go to Florida to spend the money and then come back. And I'm like, well, why don't they just stay and steal in Florida? And they said, because there you go to jail.
Oh.
Fair point. Keep us posted on this.
Fair point. Oh, fair point. Yeah, you're not supposed to say that. Florida's bad. Florida man bad. I mean, they're kind of stunned into silence there because it's so off message, right? Because it kind of makes sense, right? Like, well, they don't do these things in Florida because they get arrested there. You know, they'll go to prison there. Oh, well, that doesn't sound like you criticizing Florida. It's pretty astonishing. I mean, it's been open for a long time now, right? That it's just activism. Elon Musk said, "Wow," but it is striking when you see it that transparently exposed, right? I can't believe CNN is actually reporting on this. Yeah, normally they just ignore things that are inconvenient to the narrative. Almost like jailing criminals reduces crime. Insane concept. In Florida, you go to jail. Great point. Deterrence works. They crossed the border from the New York Post. They crossed the border illegally, then beat two cops, were let go with no bail, and now police believe they fled the city. Mockery of justice. Well, you know, this is what they voted for, though, right? This is what they wanted, apparently. And they'll vote for it again. They'll keep voting for it in New York. There's not going to be some miracle. There's not going to be some, red miracle happening there. They'll keep voting for it. Radio Streamer says reality just slapped all of CNN's audience. Yep. And they'll ignore it because it's inconvenient. All right. This was interesting. What was she saying? I'm trying to remember, but I remember she had something good to say. Let's check it out.
Did feminists ever stop to consider that maybe some of us didn't want to leave the kitchen? I mean, I would make all the sandwiches to be able to stay home. I'd be fine with that. I don't want a man in my kitchen. I don't want him sprinkling my freshly ground salt all over the floor and step on shards of salt every time I walk in the door. Like, stay out of the kitchen. I'll stay out of the workplace. I would be fine with that. I don't want equality. I don't want somebody to pound me up and ask me if I paid the cable bill. I want to be someone's delicate flower. I want to be treated like a sweet baby angel. I want them to come home and be like, babe, did you make this? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, my love. And I'm like, I know. That's what I want. Like, equality is not it. The workplace, leave it to the men. Did feminists ever stop?
So, I mean, one thing is, though, that most feminists, and certainly radical feminists, they do not look like her. So it's kind of a problem, right? They don't have the same options, and so they get angry about it, I think.
I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. So the problem was that when women in general started listening to the, I guess the oppression narrative, I guess the kind of, Marxism based oppressor narrative, I guess is what we're getting to, right? So everything has to be broken down into oppressed or oppressor, and everything is a zero-sum game, right? So men get something, women lose something, right? There's never a positive sum game where both gain, right? Because almost all of human existence, really, it's been a partnership. We're a sexually dimorphic, sexually reproducing species, right? And we are different in certain ways, and different in a complementary way, right? And 200 years ago, on a farm, or on a farm today, actually, as well. But it's been a collaboration between the two. Life was incredibly hard for almost all of human history, right? And everybody had to pitch in, including kids. So it was really just families living really difficult lives and struggling to get by and to not starve to death, for instance, right? This idea that, men have been inordinately benefiting from these relationships for, all of time is absurd. Life was really, really hard for everybody until pretty recent times. So, but the oppressor-oppressed narrative is just so powerful, obviously. It's still going strong today with, modern Marxists. So anyway, she seems to have it figured out. She knows what she doesn't want, that's for sure. Let's see. This person is teaching 4-year-olds. She doesn't know if she's a boy or a girl. These are the people teaching her kids. I have not watched this yet, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it just might be batshit crazy.
Hi, so I have a small dilemma. I am starting a new job on Monday, and it's a teaching job. So the kids are going to call me either Mr. or Mrs. Jamie. It depends on what I want, but I, as a non-binary being, I don't know what to pick. I feel like Mrs. would be easier for the kids, but Mr. makes me feel better. But I also kind of want to try mix, but I don't know if the kids can do that. I don't. And then what do they do when they ask me if I'm a boy or a girl? I'm not. I don't know.
Explain that it's young kids too.
It's young kids. My class is gonna be 4-year-olds, so I don't know. And then I don't know if I want to go by Jamie or Jamie Ray, because Jamie Ray is the name that I go by now. I don't know. Any advice would be great for any non-binary teachers.
SOS, save our ship.
SOS, SOC, save our captain. Thanks.
4-year-olds. Maybe won't anybody think of the children? Please. Maybe not confusing the children is more important than your gender narcissism. You know, if you can't decide if you want to be called Mr. or Miss or Mix or whatever, maybe your whole thing is just bullshit. Maybe none of it's real. Maybe this is all just narcissism. Just somebody who is, I hate to say it, but perhaps somewhat unremarkable, looking for a way to appear remarkable without actually having to earn it. Is that a possibility here? I just feel like perhaps there should be some sort of a filter in place to keep, delusional narcissists out of the classrooms, especially around 4-year-olds. Got to be around 4-year-olds. Jesus. What is it, though, other than a social experiment, right? I mean, obviously, it's nonsense. Like, you're not a bunch of different genders. You're not omni-gender. You're not every gender. You're not frog gender or deer gender or tree gender. Those things aren't real, right? These are just abstract concepts that don't mean anything, right? These are just fantasies, right? You are female or male. You are one of those two, biologically. Perhaps there needs to be some filter. Some filter to keep out insane narcissists. Not even insane. I don't think these people are actually insane. I think they know deep down that none of this is true, that this is just attention getting. They like the attention. Free Dick said, Mrs. McNuggets, what? No! Now, should we go to the comments? Are they going to be cruel? I don't know. Notice how the only person she's worried about being comfortable in that class is herself. Exactly. Narcissists, every single one of them. Exactly. Well, that also gets a clap. Comedy versus reality. 1990s comedy versus 2020's reality. Yep. That's why Saturday Night Live sucks now. If you don't know how chromosomes work, if you don't know how chromosomes work, you shouldn't be teaching anyone anything. If this video doesn't get this woman fired, then whoever hired her needs to get fired also. Is going to warp children with her insanity. It's like I said, it's a giant social experiment on a generation of children. That's what this is. Based on just the most obviously transparent pseudoscience imaginable. Apparently, a mental health screening should now be a requirement for a teaching role. This has to stop. Agreed. Leave the children alone. There's no such thing as a trans child. I also agree with that. Let's see. They all sound the same every time. We know what he's going to say, but let's do it anyway.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook. No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook. No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
I never get sick of hearing that. I never get sick of it. Let's go back. How much more have we got to see here? Don't know. There's a few more. All right. Let's keep going. If you guys want to keep going, I'll keep going. So what is this? Jonathan K. I have chilling news to report. On top of the 2 genocides that Canada is inflicting on Indigenous people and the genocide against Gaza, we're also genociding trans people. That makes 4 genocides. Yeah, he's not being serious there. Let's see.
The point of making it impossible to be a trans youth is to make it impossible to grow up and become a trans adult. The point of killing trans youth is to wipe out the next generation of trans adults. The point of everything the province is doing is to destroy trans people as a meaningful population. And what is that? That's genocide.
Interesting. You know, there are gay people, especially older gay people, that are saying that, in fact, what they're saying is happening to trans people is happening to gays, because most of the, like 80% of genuinely gender dysphoric, I don't mean that they saw, a bunch of TikTok videos and are being kind of the G worded into it. I'm talking about like genuine as a disorder, gender dysphoria. The vast majority of them will just simply be gay or lesbian. Right? They'll grow out of the gender dysphoria and just end up being gay or lesbian. And it seems to me that you would have an argument there that they're actually doing what this guy says to gay people, trying to transform them. If they like blue, if they show any kind of feminine traits whatsoever, they must be trans. As opposed to maybe they're just gay, right? And if they're just gay, well, you don't have to actually mutilate them, which seems like a good thing. Let's see. Radio Streamer says they need an army of angry, stupid, confused youth to control for their planned decay of society. Yeah, for the revolution. This is the demoralization that like Yuri Bezmenov was talking about, right? Not like demoralize, like down, but like removing the morals from a population. Is what they're talking about. Is what he was talking about there. When he was talking about, the Soviet plans to, the psyops to destroy Western civilization, basically. But let's go through this, how insane this is. Let's go through it bit by bit.
The point of making it impossible to be a trans youth is to make it impossible to grow up and become a trans adult.
Well, the point is that children cannot consent. They cannot consent to these life-changing procedures, right? They cannot consent to being like chemically castrated, for instance. They cannot give informed consent for having double mastectomies. Right? Like that's the point of this. It's to not damage children who might be caught up in something might be caught up in something they don't understand. They don't know what it's like to be an adult. They don't know what it's like to inhabit an adult body, right? This is the point. But let's continue.
The point of killing trans youth is to wipe out the next generation of trans adults.
So now it's gone on to killing trans youth, and nobody is proposing that. See, we've got the thing here. In Alberta's new war on trans people, children will suffer, from one of these activist magazines, right? So that's just made up. So is what they mean there that by not using the affirming model and just simply just rushing them through transition, you're killing them? This is the way that they manipulate language.
The point of everything the province is doing is to destroy trans people as a meaningful population. And what is that?
No, the point of what they're doing is to protect kids, quite clearly, quite obviously, from people like you, I would say, who have terrible, reckless, insane ideas that want to push children through medical processes that at the very least are physically damaging, osteoporosis, all kinds of problems, cancers. But let's let her finish. Her. Did I say her? Let's continue.
That's genocide.
No, it's not genocide. It's what any responsible society would do. That's what it is. Nobody's getting genocided. Children are being protected from an insane ideology. An insane pseudoscientific. It's metaphysics. It's not real. None of this is fucking real. Anyway, let's continue. So this is interesting. They're mad that I spoke out against asylum seekers who ganged up on and beat cops. So this is Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks. She's been getting into trouble lately for saying some things that are kind of almost sane or actually sane. One of them has a record of beating retail workers while robbing their stores. So she's responding to this here. So Carmina from Free Palestine, of course, says Anna Kasparian seems to have forgotten that seeking asylum is an internationally recognized human right, not privilege. Well, you have to seek asylum in the United States, you need to go through an official port of entry. So it is illegal entry into the country. But anyway, let's hear what she had to say here.
These are not people you need to provide cover for. These are people who are in the country claiming asylum. They don't have a right to be here. It is a privilege to be able to take advantage of our asylum program. And these are not people you need to provide cover for. These are people who are in the country claiming asylum. They don't have a right to be here. It is a privilege to be able to take advantage of our asylum program. And these are not people you need to provide cover for.
So that's getting her into trouble. You see, any step backwards, now you're right wing, right? Now you're right wing. Any disagreement whatsoever. Yeah, but I mean, it's all utterly predictable, right? But she's still on the Young Turks, and I mean, she's still a leftist. It's just she's finding out that, you know, they won't brook any disagreement on anything, or else you're going to get attacked. Let's see. 150 Democrats vote against the bill to deport illegals caught while driving drunk. Jesus. Elon Musk is saying, what the heck is going on? It is total madness. I mean, this really is, you know, going to be, it's not going to be a chapter in a book, history book. It's going to be in a book, and it's going to be many books about this. It's really, it's what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's unique, really, isn't it? I mean, we know there's been neglect on the border policies, on immigration policies, but never like an active facilitation of it and then protection of it to the point where you can't deport. You have 150 Democrats voting against the bill to deport illegals caught driving while drunk. That is surreal, is it not? I mean, when you step back and just take a look, you realize like this is insane. This is historic. This is follow the Roman Empire stuff. Let's see. The tampon dispenser in a boy's bathroom in a Connecticut school was ripped down 20 minutes after being installed. The principal sent out an email describing the event as the most egregious instance of vandalism and promised consequences for the list of suspects. So the boys at the high school didn't like there being a tampon dispenser in their bathroom, and they tore it down. And I don't blame them, because it is fucking totally retarded. And they're noticing that. I think we've got a really conservative generation coming up, perhaps, because, I mean, they rebel, right? They rebel against the man. Who's the man now? Well, the man is, I guess the man is a drag queen, I guess, at this point. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see. Have we reached the end? I think we've gotten back to what I was doing on Wednesday. So I think we might be just about done. I do want to show you this again, though. We'd looked at this last week, but I want to look at it again. Still don't believe the trans genocide is happening? Take a few seconds to listen to this trans activist lay out the most persuasive and lucid and data-rich case yet. I'm going to force you guys to watch this one more time.
Because that is what is going on in here. That is what the trans genocide in this country, in this city, has brought me to. Imagine that. Because that is what.
So, Radio Streamer says, "Oh, she looks sane." Yeah. I mean, I think this is by design something you can't even argue with. I mean, you can't argue with that. That's just the crazy person, right? Or somebody pretending to be crazy, right? It's designed to just to just make you walk away, right? Like you can't have a rational conversation with that. That's impossible. Let's see. What have we got? So yeah, we've been through pretty much everything. So no, I guess that's it. I guess we're done. It's over for tonight. 2 hours and 47 minutes. Not too bad. We did all right. Well, everybody, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm putting out like a lot of videos during the week now. And again, those are like my regular videos, like 4 to 7, 8 minutes that are edited and they're very clean and, put together. They're different from the live stream. This is just me just blabbing, basically, endlessly. But subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this and stuff like that. There's lots of it. I put out tons every week. And hopefully I'll see you guys on Friday night. And I think we'll go at the latest 10 o'clock. Maybe we'll go like 8 o'clock. I don't know. But good night, everybody. Good night, Radio Streamer, Freedix, everybody. We will see you next time.